From the sudden death of a sports reporter in Qatar to the demise of a longtime investigative journalist, life-threatening health issues unfortunately aren't unheard of among TV news anchors. Here are a few TV journalists you may not have realized passed away. News anchor Bernard Shaw worked for CNN from the beginning. In fact, he was the network's first chief anchor. When Shaw died of pneumonia in September 2022, he was 82 years old at the time and had long since moved on from his role at CNN, which he left in 2001.
Finally tonight, we remember a legendary newsman and pioneer, Bernard Shaw.
According to The Guardian, Shaw helped break barriers in the industry while creating a path for Black journalists, as he was momentarily the only Black journalist delivering the evening news on a major network. CNN chairman and CEO Chris Licht shared a touching statement following Shaw's death, writing, "Bernie was a CNN original and was our Washington anchor when we launched on June 1st, 1980. He was our lead anchor for the next 20 years, from anchoring coverage of presidential elections to his iconic coverage of the first Gulf War live from Baghdad in 1991. Even after he left CNN, Bernie remained a close member of our CNN family, providing our viewers with context about historical events as recently as last year." Licht went on to lend his condolences to the late news anchor's family. Sports journalist Grant Wahl died of a ruptured aortic aneurysm while covering the World Cup in Qatar in December 2022. He was 49. CNN reported that Wahl collapsed while working and was later transported to a hospital, where he sadly did not survive. World Soccer magazine columnist Keir Radnedge spoke to the news network about watching the tragedy unfold, saying, "This was towards the end of extra time in the match. Suddenly, colleagues up to my left started shouting for medical assistance. Obviously, someone had collapsed. Because the chairs are freestanding, people were able to move the chairs, so it's possible to create a little bit of space around him." Wahl's wife, Dr. Celine Gounder, spoke to CBS Mornings about her husband's cause of death. She revealed that his aortic aneurysm had likely been worsening for years up until his passing. In a letter shared to Wahl's website, Gounder addressed the previously mentioned conspiracy theories that had surfaced surrounding the tragedy. With rumors previously spreading about unconfirmed causes of Wahl's death on social media, some users even made unsubstantiated allegations that the COVID-19 vaccine had led to the journalist's passing. She wrote in part, "His death was unrelated to COVID. His death was unrelated to vaccination status. There was nothing nefarious about his death." Gounder also described her late husband's character in her letter, writing, "Grant was an incredible, empathetic, dedicated, and loving husband, brother, uncle, and son, who was our greatest teammate and fan."
To know that he was so loved by so many people, it makes me feel a little bit less alone.
Tim Russert was powerful and influential in the world of journalism, so he left behind quite a legacy when he died of a heart attack in June 2008 at age 58. Russert was known for his work on Meet the Press, but he was also vice president of NBC News. The reporter had the opportunity to interview a number of well-known politicians during his career, including former President George W. Bush. During a news conference the day after Russert's death, Bush shared a touching statement in honor of the journalist, saying, "America lost a really fine citizen yesterday when Tim Russert passed away. I've had the privilege of being interviewed by Tim Russert. I found him to be a hardworking, thorough, decent man." Sending his condolences to the late reporter's loved ones, Bush added, "Tim Russert loved his country. He loved his family. He loved his job a lot." Further details on Russert's death were revealed after medical professional Dr. Scott Monrad spoke to the Los Angeles Times about the journalist's cardiac arrest, saying, "Russert had bad luck because his heart went into arrhythmia, but we don't know who will or when." CBS News White House correspondent Bill Plante died in September 2022 at age 84. Plante was a veteran journalist, working in the field for 52 years, according to the New York Times. Former President Barack Obama's first press secretary, Robert Gibbs, shared insight into why Plante was widely admired in his industry, saying, "I remember Bill as fearless in how he asked questions, unflinching and unafraid to ask the president or his staff to defend their decisions, and never in the least bit worried about offending those in power in pursuit of those answers."
Did you make a mistake in sending arms to Tehran, sir?
No.
Plante's fearlessness was apparent when he spoke about his approach to journalism and the importance of uncovering the truth. He said in an interview with the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, "I have no wasted sympathy on any occupant of the White House. They are out to present themselves in the best possible light, and it's our job to find out, if we can, what's actually going on." Throughout his decades-long career, Plante covered a number of historical events, with the journalist shedding light on, among other things, the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War.
Bill Plante? No, Bill's not here. That's shocking.
Fox News anchor Pemmaraju was a trailblazer who had been with the network since it first launched. She passed away at age 64 in August 2022, and her cause of death has not been released. Fox News Media CEO Suzanne Scott said in a statement, "We are deeply saddened by the death of Pemmaraju, who was one of Fox News Channel's founding anchors and was on the air the day we launched. Was an incredibly talented journalist as well as a warm and lovely person, best known for her kindness to everyone she worked with. We extend our heartfelt condolences to her entire family." Pemmaraju attended Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas, where she studied political science and went on to work for San Antonio Express News before eventually settling in at Fox News. She worked on Fox News Now and Fox on Trends before briefly leaving the network and returning in 2003. Pemmaraju and her daughter, Karina, were seemingly incredibly close. The heartbroken daughter shared a tribute to her late mother on Instagram following her sudden death, writing, "To my very best friend, words cannot express how deeply devastated I am to have lost you. Your bravery, kindness, and all of the laughter and light you filled every moment with has inspired me in every sense." ABC News anchor Peter Jennings died of lung cancer at age 67 in August 2005. Months prior to Jennings' death, he announced his diagnosis on air, saying, "As some of you know now, I have learned in the last couple of days that I have lung cancer. Yes, I was a smoker until about 20 years ago, and I was weak, and I smoked over 9/11, but whatever the reason, the news does slow you down a bit. I've been reminding my colleagues today, who have all been incredibly supportive, that almost 10 million Americans are already living with cancer, and I have a lot to learn from them." Jennings covered many historical moments all over the world during his time as a journalist. In addition to reporting on the Berlin Wall and the Civil Rights Movement, he was among the first journalists to document the Vietnam War when he traveled to the country in the 60s. Former President George W. Bush spoke about Jennings' many accomplishments following his death, saying, "A lot of Americans relied upon Peter Jennings for their news. He became a part of the lives of a lot of our fellow citizens, and he will be missed. May God bless his soul." Fred Hickman died of liver cancer in November 2022 at age 66. The legendary sports reporter was among the first anchors during CNN's 1980 launch. Over the course of Hickman's career, he worked for the news networks Sports Tonight, as well as for Yes Network, ESPN Sports Center, and more media outlets. Many of Hickman's colleagues took to social media following his death to share memories of working with him. ESPN's Hannah Storm, for example, wrote on Twitter, "So very sad to hear about the passing of Fred Hickman. I was the only female anchor at CNN Sports, and Fred was such a welcoming presence, always with a laugh, a quip, a story, and supremely talented. Rest in peace, my friend." Hugh Downs became a household name through his work on NBC's Today Show and 2020 on ABC.
Good evening, I'm Hugh Downs.
He accomplished a lot throughout his long life until he passed away at the age of 99 in July 2020. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Downs actually spent the early days of his career as a children's entertainer on the kids' show Kukla, Fran and Ollie. He also worked at radio stations before snagging a spot on NBC's Caesar Hour. He landed these gigs after moving on from working as a network announcer in his home state of Ohio. Downs once said of the job, "There was a tendency to think that an announcer was a rich guy who threw his golf clubs in a high-powered car and motored out to the links. But it wasn't like that at all. There was no glamour. It was hard work." He went on to share that he was questioned why he took the job in the first place because his nerves often got the best of him. Luckily, it seems that Downs was able to find a gig he loved with the Today Show because he stayed there from 1962 to 1971. The journalist retired from TV in 1999 after impressively breaking the record for the most hours on air. Former news anchor Bobbie Battista had worked with CNN since the network launched in the 80s, when she died of cervical cancer in March 2020 at age 67. The late journalist's husband issued a statement which read in part, "Bobbie was the consummate trooper in her struggle with cancer. She was courageous and fearless in her battle, and thoughtful for all the others in her life, even as she fought through the pain." According to Deadline, Battista's lengthy journalism career started in the mid-70s with a job as a local Raleigh, North Carolina news news station anchor and producer. She would also later host CNN's Talk Back Live. Battista was recognized for her work with the Peabody Award in 1981, having earned the accolade for writing and producing the documentary Fed Up with Fear. Longtime NPR and ABC News journalist Cokie Roberts died of breast cancer complications in September 2019 at age 75. Roberts worked with NPR from the beginning and was even considered a trailblazer for women in journalism after joining the radio station back in 1978, an impact she shared with only a few other female colleagues during this time. The station's national political correspondent, Mara Liasson, told the Daily Princetonian, "We called them the founding mothers of NPR, or sometimes we called them the Fallopian Club." Roberts' parents, Hale and Lindy Boggs, were prominent politicians who both served as U.S. representatives. The journalist dabbled in the world of politics herself as a congressional correspondent, but she decided not to follow in her mother and father's footsteps by becoming a politician herself. It seems that journalism better served Roberts. She spoke to Kentucky Educational Television about participating in politics only indirectly through her work, saying, "I do feel strongly that informing the voters about what's going on, trying to explain it in ways that people can understand, and putting the issues out there is a form of participation." As for Roberts' personal life, she was married to fellow journalist Stephen V. Roberts, who worked for the New York Times and honored his late wife's legacy with the 2021 book Cokie, A Life Well Lived. The couple had 2 children. CNN senior investigative correspondent Drew Griffin died of cancer in December 2022. According to The Hollywood Reporter, he was 60 years old at the time of his death. Griffin began working for CNN in 2004 and built an impressive career with the network.
If you were asking us for money, what would you say you did with your money?
We help children with cancer.
And how do you do that?
Some of his most notable investigative stories included a piece on New Orleans police officers who looted during Hurricane Katrina, a look into defective Ford vehicles that caught fire, and a Peabody Award-winning piece on long delays at Veterans Affairs hospitals that led to the deaths of 19 military veterans. Given Griffin's impressive portfolio, you might not be surprised to hear that his work also earned him Emmy Awards and an Edward R. Murrow Award. CNN CEO Chris Licht acknowledged Griffin's many accomplishments in a statement he shared with staff following his death. He also spoke about the journalist's incredible dedication to his craft, saying his work ethic was unparalleled. He spent long hours poring over documents and working the phones. Even as he battled cancer, he refused to give up on the reporting that was so important to him, and was even working on an investigation until the day he passed away.